The coach lurched to a stop, sending up a cloud of pale dust that hung in the air like a question mark. Lena Calder gripped the worn leather of her traveling case and stepped down onto ground that felt nothing like home. Wyoming stretched out before her, endless, indifferent, and already passing judgment. She'd known the moment she boarded in Philadelphia that she didn't belong. The other passengers had made that clear enough with their sideways glances and hushed conversations that stopped when she drew near. A woman alone, heading west to marry a man she'd never met, wearing a dress too fine for the frontier and carrying herself with the kind of stillness that people mistook for weakness. They had no idea what stillness cost. "You're the Mercer bride?" The voice came from a man leaning against a wagon, his face weathered like old boot leather. He didn't bother hiding his disappointment. "I'm Lena Calder." She met his eyes without flinching. "If the Mercers sent you, then yes." He spat into the dust. "Name's Dutch. I work the ranch. Cole's been held up with a fence dispute, so you're stuck with me." He jerked his head toward the wagon. "Throw your things in back." She hesitated only a moment before hoisting her case into the wagon bed herself. Dutch raised an eyebrow but said nothing, just climbed up onto the driver's seat and waited for her to settle beside him. The town, if you could call it that, disappeared behind them within minutes. What replaced it was a landscape so vast and empty it made Lena's chest tighten. Rolling plains stretched toward mountains that looked close enough to touch but never seemed to get any nearer. The sky pressed down, too big, too blue, too everything. "Long way from Philadelphia," Dutch said after a while. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "You got people back there?" "No." The word came out harder than she intended. "Not anymore." Dutch nodded slowly, like that explained something. "Cole know what you look like?" "What?" "We exchanged letters. No photographs." "Huh." He guided the horses around a rut in the road. "He mentioned his mother?" Lena's fingers tightened on her case. "He said she runs the household." Dutch's laugh was short and bitter. "That's one way to put it." They rode in silence for a long stretch. Lena watched the landscape roll past, trying not to think about the life she'd left behind. Mrs. Hartwell's house in Philadelphia, with its proper parlors and suffocating routines. 10 years she'd spent there, watching the old woman fade by inches, holding her hand through the bad nights, reading to her when the pain got too fierce for sleep. 10 years of being invisible, necessary, and utterly alone. When Mrs. Hartwell finally passed, she'd left Lena exactly nothing. The house went to a distant nephew who'd never visited once during those final, difficult years. The nephew had given Lena 2 weeks to vacate and a recommendation letter so tepid it might as well have been blank. At 28, with no family, no prospects, and savings that wouldn't last through winter, Lena had done what desperate women have always done. She'd found another way to survive. The matrimonial advertisement had been simple: rancher seeking wife. Must be of good character and willing to work. Write to Cole Mercer, Mercer Ranch, Wyoming Territory. His letters had been careful, almost formal. He'd described the ranch, the land, the harsh winters, and short summers. He'd mentioned his father's failing health and the work that never seemed to end. He hadn't mentioned love, and neither had she. That seemed honest enough. "There." Dutch pointed ahead where a cluster of buildings emerged from the plains like something dreamed up by the land itself. Mercer Ranch. It was bigger than Lena had imagined. The main house stood 2 stories tall, solid and plain, flanked by a barn, several outbuildings, and corrals that held more horses than she could quickly count. Smoke rose from the chimney in a thin, straight line. As they drew closer, Lena spotted figures moving near the barn. One of them, a tall man with dark hair, looked up at the sound of the wagon and went still. "That's him," Dutch said. "Cole." The man started toward them, his stride long and unhurried. Even from a distance, Lena could see he was nothing like his letters suggested. She'd pictured someone harder, older. Instead, Cole Mercer looked young, maybe 35, with a lean build and an open face that hadn't quite learned to hide what it felt. He reached the wagon just as Dutch pulled the horses to a stop. "Miss Calder." His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Welcome to Mercer Ranch." "Mr. Mercer." Lena accepted his hand as she climbed down. His grip was warm, calloused, careful. "Cole, please." He released her hand quickly, like he wasn't sure he had the right to hold it longer. "I apologize for not meeting you in town myself. We've had some trouble with fences." Dutch mentioned it. "Right." Cole glanced at Dutch, who was already unloading Lena's trunk. "Thank you for collecting her." "Didn't have much choice." Dutch hauled the trunk down with a grunt. "Your mother made it clear enough." Something flickered across Cole's face. Not quite annoyance, not quite resignation. Something caught between the two. "She's waiting inside. We should—" He trailed off, looking toward the house like a man facing a firing squad. The front door stood open. Framed in the doorway was a woman who seemed to have been carved from the same unforgiving stone as the mountains. Tall, iron-gray hair pulled back so tight it must have hurt, posture rigid as a fence post. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched as they approached. "Mother," Cole said when they reached the porch, "this is Lena Calder." "Lena, my mother, Constance Mercer." "Mrs. Mercer." Lena kept her voice level, polite. "Thank you for welcoming me into your home." Constance's eyes swept over her once, quick and thorough as an inventory. "You're older than I expected." The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. "I'm 28, Lena said, "and never married before." It wasn't a question. Constance's tone suggested she'd already formed her conclusions. "Well, you're here now. I suppose we'll make do." She turned without waiting for a response and disappeared into the house. Cole's jaw tightened. "She's adjusting." "Of course." Lena picked up her smaller case. "Perhaps you could show me where I'll be staying." "Right. Yes." He grabbed her trunk like it weighed nothing and led her inside. The house was clean, spare, functional. Nothing decorative, nothing soft. The furniture looked handmade and built to last. The floors were polished but bare of rugs, and every surface was empty of the small personal touches that made a house feel lived in. "Your room is upstairs," Cole said, taking the steps two at a time. "It's not much, but it's private. You'll have—" "Cole." Constance's voice carried from somewhere below. "Your father is asking for his medicine." He stopped mid-step, his shoulders sagging slightly. "I'll be right there." Then to Lena, "Third door on the left. I'll be back to check on you shortly." He was gone before she could respond, his boots heavy on the stairs. Lena found the room easily enough. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the eastern pastures. She set her case down and stood there for a moment, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around her. Voices drifted up from below, Constance's sharp and commanding, Cole's quieter, harder to make out. Then a third voice, older and weaker, coughing. She should unpack. She should change into something more practical. She should go downstairs and offer to help with whatever needed doing. Instead, Lena sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. They were good hands, strong from years of lifting and turning patients, scrubbing floors, wringing out laundry. Mrs. Hartwell used to say they were the hands of a girl who knew her place. The thought made her laugh, just once, sharp and bitter. She'd come 2,000 miles to a place that didn't want her, to marry a man who couldn't meet her eyes, to live under the roof of a woman who decided she was worthless in the first 10 seconds. Nothing about this was new. Lena stood, smoothed her skirt, and began unpacking. She'd survived worse than Constance Mercer. She'd survived this too. Dinner was served at 6 sharp in a dining room that felt more like a courtroom. Constance sat at the head of the table with Cole to her right. Lena was directed to the seat opposite him, close enough to see his discomfort, far enough to make conversation awkward. The fourth chair remained empty. "My father doesn't join us for meals anymore," Cole explained quietly, as a young woman, hardly more than a girl, brought out plates of beef, potatoes, and green beans. "His health is failing," Constance interrupted, "as it has been for 3 years. No need to dress it up with pretty words." She fixed Lena with a cold stare. "You'll find we don't waste time on sentiment here, Miss Calder. This is a working ranch, not a Philadelphia parlor." I understand that, Mrs. Mercer. Do you? Constance
This
cut
story
into her
was
beef
posted
with
on the
precise,
channel The
almost
Rusty
violent
Saddle.
strokes.
Please do not repost
Because
it in any
Cole's letters
form.
suggested you've never set foot on a ranch in your life. That you spent the last decade caring for an elderly invalid in the city. Tell me, what exactly qualifies you to be a rancher's wife? Cole shifted uncomfortably. Mother. It's a fair question. Constance didn't look at him. A wife is meant to be a partner in this life, not a burden. I need to know if my son has made a catastrophic mistake. Lena set down her fork carefully. Every instinct screamed at her to fight back, to match that tone with steel of her own, but she'd learned long ago that there were different ways to win. You're right that I've never worked a ranch, she said evenly. But I've worked. I know how to manage a household, keep accounts, nurse the sick, and stretch resources when they're scarce. I'm not afraid of hard labor or long hours, and I'm here because Cole and I both believed we could build something together. She paused, meeting Constance's eyes. If that proves to be a mistake, time will tell. But I intend to do my part. Constance's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Maybe surprise, maybe grudging respect, or maybe just calculation. Time will tell, she repeated slowly. Yes, I suppose it will. The rest of the meal passed in near silence, broken only by the scrape of cutlery and the young serving girl's quiet footsteps. Lena ate without tasting, hyper-aware of Cole's presence across from her, of the way he kept glancing at her like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. When the plates were cleared, Constance stood. Cole, your father will need his evening medication. See to it. She turned to Lena. You look exhausted, Miss Calder. I suggest you retire early. Tomorrow begins at 5. It was a dismissal, pure and simple. Lena rose. 5 o'clock, I'll be ready. She climbed the stairs to her small room and changed into her nightgown by lamplight, listening to the house around her. Footsteps in the hall, Cole probably, heading to his father's room. The creak of floorboards as Constance moved through the lower level, locking doors, banking fires, securing her domain. Lena blew out the lamp and lay in the darkness, staring at shadows on the ceiling. This was her life now. This cold house, this harsh land, this family that had already decided she didn't measure up. But she'd made her choice. She'd signed the marriage certificate at the courthouse that afternoon, with Cole's hand shaking slightly as he wrote his name. She'd burned every bridge that could carry her back to Philadelphia. There was no retreat. There was only forward. And if Constance Mercer thought she could break Lena with hard work and harder words, she was about to learn how wrong she was. 5 o'clock came early and brutal. Someone, the serving girl, Lena learned her name was Beth, knocked softly on her door in the pre-dawn darkness. Mrs. Mercer says to come down for breakfast. Lena dressed quickly in the most practical clothes she'd brought, a simple brown dress with a reinforced hem and sleeves that could be rolled up. She braided her hair tight and wound it into a knot at the base of her skull. The kitchen was already warm, the stove radiating heat. Constance stood at the counter, slicing bread with mechanical precision. She glanced up as Lena entered. You'll take your breakfast with the hands this morning. Beth will show you where. After that, Cole will assign you your duties. Yes, Mrs. Mercer. And Miss Calder? Constance set down the knife. We rise at 5, but work begins at 4:30. Don't be late again. Lena absorbed the rebuke without flinching. Understood. Beth led her out to a smaller building behind the house, where 6 men sat around a rough table, shoveling down eggs and biscuits. They looked up as Lena entered, their conversation dying mid-sentence. New bride, one of them muttered. Heard you came in yesterday. That's right. Lena took the empty seat at the end of the table. Lena Calder. Mercer, I suppose now. Tom Keegan. The man who'd spoken nodded to her. He was older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and hands gnarled by work. Foreman. This here's the crew, Dutch you met, and that's Parker, Jim, Sam, and the kid there is Andy. They nodded or grunted acknowledgement, already turning back to their food. Lena accepted a plate from Beth and ate in silence, listening to the men discuss fence repairs, a sick horse, and whether the north pasture was ready for grazing. Cole appeared in the doorway just as they were finishing. Lena, when you're done, I'd like to show you around. The men exchanged glances as she rose, but no one said anything. Outside, the sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern horizon, turning the sky from black to deep blue. Cole walked beside her, hands shoved in his pockets, not quite looking at her. "I'm sorry about last night," he said finally. "My mother, she's protective of the ranch. Of me." She made her feelings clear. "She'll come around. Once she sees—" He stopped himself. "You should know, things here aren't easy. This land takes everything you have and then asks for more. My father built this place from nothing, and now he can barely remember his own name half the time. Mother's been holding it together through sheer will. She's afraid of anything that might threaten that. And I'm a threat. You're an unknown." He finally met her eyes. "So am I to you. We're strangers trying to build a marriage out of letters and hope. That's—" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's either brave or foolish. Maybe both. Yeah, maybe both." He showed her the ranch, the barn with its neat rows of stalls, the chicken coops, the smokehouse, the root cellar, the work sheds. He pointed out the pastures, the creek that provided water, the line of cottonwoods that marked the southern boundary. He introduced her to more people, a cook named Martha who worked in the main house, a wrangler named Cruz, the blacksmith whose name she immediately forgot. Everyone was polite. Everyone was distant. By mid-morning, Lena's head was spinning with names and locations and instructions. Cole seemed to sense her overwhelm because he led her to the barn and gestured to a pile of tack that needed mending. "Do you know how to work with leather?" "I can learn." He handed her a harness with a broken strap. "Start with this. Beth will bring you lunch. I'll check back this afternoon." Then he was gone, striding toward the corrals where Dutch and Parker were working with a fractious horse. Lena sat down on an upturned crate and examined the harness. The leather was worn but good quality. The break was clean. It could be sewn if she had the right tools. She found what she needed in a wooden chest against the wall: heavy thread, needles thick as nails, a leather punch, and a vise to hold the work steady. It took her 20 minutes to figure out the technique, and her fingers were cramping by the time she finished the first stitch, but she kept going. The work was oddly soothing, repetitive, physical, requiring enough focus that she couldn't think about anything else. She was halfway through when a shadow fell across her workbench. "Cole said you'd never worked a ranch." Lena looked up to find Constance standing in the barn doorway, backlit by the noon sun. "I haven't. Yet here you are, mending tack." Constance stepped closer, examining Lena's work with a critical eye. "Adequate. Not good, but adequate. I'll improve with practice." "Will you?" Constance picked up a piece of repaired harness, testing the stitches with her fingers. "Or will you tire of this in a week and decide you've made a terrible mistake? How long before you run back to your city comforts?" Lena set down her needle. "I have no city comforts to run back to, Mrs. Mercer. No home, no family, no prospects. I'm here because this is the best chance I have at building a life. Whether you believe that or not doesn't change the truth of it." Constance was quiet for a long moment. "My husband brought me to this land 40 years ago," she said finally. "I was younger than you, softer. I thought I knew what hard work meant." She gave a short, bitter laugh. "I knew nothing. The first winter nearly killed me. I cried every night for 6 months. Do you know what stopped me from leaving?" "No, ma'am." "Pride." Constance's smile was sharp as broken glass. "I told everyone back in St. Louis that I was going to build an empire. I couldn't go crawling back and admit I was wrong." She dropped the harness back onto the pile. "I learned to survive out of spite. Is that what you're doing, Miss Calder? Surviving out of spite? If that's what it takes—" Something almost like approval crossed Constance's face. "Then perhaps you won't be completely useless after all." She turned to leave, then paused. "Your stitches are too loose. They'll fail under pressure. Do them again." And she was gone. Lena looked down at her work. The woman was right. The stitches were uneven, some too tight, some too slack. She picked up a small knife and began cutting them out, one by one. If Constance Mercer wanted to test her, fine. Lena had been tested by experts in the art of slow cruelty. She knew how to endure. The days began to blur together, each one bleeding into the next in a rhythm.
This story
of
was
work,
posted on the
meals,
channel The
and
Rusty
exhausted
Saddle.
sleep.
Please do not repost
Lena
it
rose
in any
at
form.
4:30, dressed in the dark, and made herself useful wherever she could. She mended tack, fed chickens, helped Martha in the kitchen, learned to milk the cows without getting kicked. Constance watched her constantly, appearing without warning to point out flaws, correct techniques, or deliver cutting observations about Lena's inadequacies. The woman never raised her voice, never lost her composure. She didn't need to. Every word was calculated to wound. Cole tried to run interference when he could, but he was pulled in too many directions, managing the ranch hands, dealing with neighbors, caring for his father. Lena saw him most often at dinner, where he sat silent and tense while Constance dominated the conversation. They'd been married 2 weeks and had barely spoken 10 words in private. At night, Lena lay in her narrow bed and listened to the house settle. Sometimes she heard Cole moving in his room down the hall. Sometimes she heard Constance's footsteps, restless and constant. And sometimes, late into the night, she heard the old man coughing, harsh, rattling sounds that seemed to tear something loose in the darkness. She should offer to help with him. That had been her work for 10 years, caring for the dying. But Constance had made it clear that James Mercer was her responsibility and hers alone. So Lena stayed in her room and tried not to listen. 3 weeks after her arrival, everything changed. She was in the kitchen with Martha, learning to make the kind of bread that didn't turn to stone by evening when Beth came running in, her face pale. "It's Mr. Mercer. He's fallen. Mrs. Mercer is asking for help." Lena didn't think. She just moved. She found them in the upstairs bedroom, Constance kneeling beside her husband, who lay crumpled on the floor near the window. He must have been trying to reach it and collapsed halfway there. "I can't lift him," Constance said. Her voice was steady, but Lena saw the tremor in her hands. I'll help." Lena knelt on James Mercer's other side. "Can you hear me, Mr. Mercer? We're going to move you back to bed." He made a sound that might have been agreement. Up close, Lena could see how frail he'd become. All sharp angles and loose skin, his breath coming in short, painful gasps. "On 3, she said to Constance. "We lift together, support his weight between us. 1, 2, 3. They got him up and onto the bed with surprising efficiency. Constance's strength, Lena realized, was considerable beneath that rigid exterior. "His medicine." Constance moved to the bedside table. "Let me check him first." Lena was already examining James, her hands moving with practiced certainty, pulse rapid but steady, color poor, breathing labored but not critical. "Has he eaten today?" "He refuses most meals." "And his medication? Is he taking it regularly?" Constance's silence was answer enough. Lena looked up and saw something she hadn't expected, shame in the older woman's eyes, raw, undisguised shame. "He fights me," Constance said quietly. "Every day he fights me. Won't eat, won't take his medicine, doesn't recognize me half the time. Yesterday he called me Rebecca. That was his mother's name. She's been dead 30 years. James stirred on the bed, his eyes opening. They were cloudy, unfocused. "Rebecca? Is it time for breakfast?" "No, Father." Constance's voice cracked just slightly. "It's Constance. It's afternoon. You need to rest." But he was already agitated, trying to sit up. "I have to check the fence line. If I don't check it, they'll come through. Mr. Mercer." Lena put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The fences are fine. Cole checked them this morning. Everything is secure." He focused on her with difficulty. "Who are you?" "I'm Lena. I'm here to help." "Lena." He seemed to test the name. "Pretty name. Rebecca had a sister named Lena." "Did she?" Lena kept her voice soft, soothing. "Why don't you tell me about her while you rest? I'd like to hear about Rebecca's sister." And just like that, he settled. Started talking in rambling, disconnected sentences about people long dead and events half remembered. Lena let him talk, nodding in the right places, gently steering him back when he got agitated. When he finally drifted off, she turned to find Constance watching her with an unreadable expression. "You've done this before." "Yes, ma'am. 10 years. Mrs. Hartwell, the woman from Cole's letters. She had her difficult days, too. Toward the end, she didn't know me at all. Called me by her daughter's name, mostly. The daughter who died 40 years earlier. Constance sat down heavily in the chair beside the bed. She looked, for the first time since Lena had met her, simply tired. Old and tired and overwhelmed. "I can help," Lena said quietly, "with your husband, if you'll let me." The silence stretched out between them. Outside, Lena could hear the ranch coming to life for the evening shift. Men calling to each other, horses nickering, the everyday sounds of a world that kept turning no matter what happened in this room. Why? Constance's question was barely above a whisper. Why would you do that? I've been nothing but cruel to you. Lena considered lying or offering some noble reason, but Constance had been honest with her in the barn that day. The least she could do was return the favor. Because watching someone you love fade away is the loneliest thing in the world, she said, and because no one should have to do it alone. Constance didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with something that might have been gratitude or grief or both. He has good days still. Not many, but some. On those days, he remembers me, remembers us. She looked at her husband's sleeping form. On those days, I can almost pretend we'll have more time. Maybe you will. Maybe. Constance stood, smoothing her skirts with shaking hands. But probably not. The doctor says it's a matter of months now, not years. She walked to the door, then stopped. Dinner is at 6, as always, but if you'd prefer to take your meal up here with James, I'll have Beth bring you a tray. I'll eat with the family, Lena said, but afterward, if you'd like, I can sit with him for a few hours. Give you some rest. Constance's throat worked. That would be acceptable. It wasn't gratitude, not exactly, but it was something. After she left, Lena sat in the chair she'd vacated and watched James Mercer sleep. His breathing had evened out and some color had returned to his cheeks. In repose, she could see hints of the man he must have been, strong-featured, determined, built for this hard land. Cole looked like him, had his build, his jaw, the same lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. The door opened quietly. Cole himself stepped in, his expression taut with worry. Beth said he fell. Is he? He's resting. We got him back to bed before he hurt himself. Cole exhaled, the tension bleeding from his shoulders. He crossed to the bedside and looked down at his father with an expression so raw it hurt to witness. Thank you, he said quietly, for helping. Of course. He pulled up another chair and sat down heavily. I heard you talking to him, heard him settle when you spoke. A muscle worked in his jaw. He doesn't do that for me anymore. Doesn't even recognize me most days. That's the disease, not you. I know, doesn't make it easier. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I'm losing him piece by piece, and there's nothing I can do about it, nothing any of us can do except watch and wait. Lena reached out and touched his hand where it rested on his knee. Just a brief contact, but he looked at her like she'd offered him something precious. I told your mother I'd sit with him tonight, she said. Give her a break. But if you'd rather... No, that's good of you. He turned his hand over, palm up, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His fingers curled around hers, warm, calloused, gentle. I'm glad you're here, Lena. I know this isn't what you expected, and Mother's made it harder than it needed to be, but I'm glad. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her since she arrived. I'm glad too, she said, and meant it. They sat like that for a while, hand in hand beside a dying man's bed, while outside the sun began its slow descent toward the mountains and the ranch settled into evening routines worn smooth by repetition. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something. A foundation, maybe. A place to start building. And on this harsh frontier, that was more than most people got. That night marked a shift, subtle as the change in wind before a storm. Lena sat with James Mercer until past midnight, reading to him from a book of poetry she'd found on the shelf, verses he didn't understand but seemed to find soothing. When Constance came to relieve her, the older woman's nod was almost cordial. Almost. The work didn't get easier. If anything, Constance pushed harder, finding new tasks before Lena could finish the old ones. But there was a difference now, a quality to the silence between them that felt less like hostility and more like assessment.
This story was
Like
posted on the
Constance was
channel
waiting
The
to see
Rusty
if Lena would
Saddle.
break.
Please do not
She
repost
wouldn't.
it in any form.
Morning came with its usual brutality. Lena dressed in the dark and made her way downstairs to find Martha already at the stove, her round face flushed from the heat. "Mrs. Mercer wants you in the north pasture today," Martha said without preamble. "They're moving cattle. She says you need to see how it's done." Lena had never been near cattle in her life, but she just nodded. "What time?" 20 minutes. Better eat quick." She forced down eggs and bread while Martha packed supplies into saddlebags: water, dried meat, bandages. "Those last ones are for the hands," Martha explained. "Cattle get spooked easy. Men get hurt. Constance always sends medical supplies when they move the herd. Has anyone taught her about first aid?" Martha laughed. "Constance? She learned by doing, same as everything else. Women set more broken bones than the doctor in town." She handed Lena the saddlebags. "You ride?" "I've been on a horse before." "That's not what I asked." "Then no, not well." Martha's expression turned sympathetic. "Better you than me. Cole's picking a gentle one for you, at least. Won't throw you unless you do something real stupid." The horse in question was a gray mare with patient eyes and a swayed back that suggested she'd long since given up on excitement. Cole helped Lena mount, his hand steadying her waist. "Her name's Dolly. She knows what to do, so just let her follow the others. Don't fight the reins." He paused, looking up at her. "You sure about this? I can tell Mother you're needed elsewhere." "I'm sure." He didn't look convinced, but he stepped back. "Stay close to Dutch. He'll keep an eye on you." The ride out to the north pasture took an hour. Lena's thighs were screaming within 20 minutes, but she kept her face neutral and her spine straight. Constance rode ahead on a black gelding, sitting the saddle like she'd been born to it. She didn't look back once. The cattle were spread across a shallow valley, hundreds of them, their hides ranging from russet to nearly black. They lifted their heads as the riders approached, watching with dark, incurious eyes. "We're moving them to higher ground," Tom Keegan explained, pulling his horse alongside Dolly. "Grass is better up there this time of year. Your job is to stay on the left flank and push any stragglers back toward the center. Don't get ahead of the herd, and don't fall behind." "Questions?" "What do I do if they run?" "Get out of the way." He wasn't joking. The work was chaos barely contained. The men spread out around the herd, calling to each other and to the cattle, using ropes and shouts, and the sheer weight of their horses to guide the massive animals uphill. Lena did what she was told, stayed on the flank, watched for cattle that wandered, guided Dolly to turn them back. It was terrifying. The animals were enormous up close, all muscle and horn and unpredictable movement. One of them swung its head toward her, and Dolly shied sideways. Lena grabbed the saddle horn and held on, her heart hammering. "Easy," Dutch called from somewhere to her right. "Let the horse do the thinking." She forced herself to loosen her grip on the reins. Dolly seemed to exhale and moved back into position, cutting off a cow that had started to drift. The sun climbed higher. Sweat soaked through Lena's dress and ran down her back. Her hands blistered where they gripped the reins. Every muscle in her body screamed protest, but she didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't ask for a break. Constance noticed. Lena saw her watching from across the herd, her expression unreadable. They reached the higher pasture by early afternoon. The cattle spread out across the fresh grass, settling quickly. The men dismounted, stretching and groaning. "Not bad for a city girl," Parker said, offering Lena a canteen. "You stayed on the horse, at least." "Wasn't sure I would. We had bets going." He grinned. "I lost $5. Tom Keegan rode over, his weathered face creased with something that might have been approval. "You'll be sore tomorrow. Probably won't be able to walk, but you didn't embarrass yourself." From him, it was high praise. Constance approached on foot, leading her gelding. She looked at Lena for a long moment, then handed her reins to Dutch. "Walk her out," she said to Lena. "If you don't, you'll be crippled by morning." It wasn't kindness exactly, more like pragmatism. But Lena took it. They walked together in silence, leading their horses in wide circles around the herd. The land stretched out below them, endless grassland broken by distant rock formations and the silver thread of the creek. "You did adequately," Constance said finally. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Adequate isn't good, it's barely acceptable." "Isam." She paused. "But it's better than I expected." Lena bit back a dozen responses and settled for, "I'm learning." "You'll need to learn faster. The Hendersons are coming for dinner next week." The non sequitur threw her. "I'm sorry?" "The Hendersons. Robert owns the land west of here. His wife Adelaide fancies herself a force in local society." Constance's tone made it clear what she thought of that. "They're bringing their son, Marcus, and 2 other families, the Pratts and the Sullivans. 12 people total. Martha will handle the food, but you'll be expected to serve and manage the table." "I can do that. Can you?" Constance stopped walking, turning to face her. "These people have known our family for 20 years. They watched Cole grow up. They watched me build this ranch alongside James. And now they're going to meet you, the woman Cole married without consulting anyone, the stranger from back east who showed up with fancy dresses and no skills." Her eyes were hard. "They'll be looking for weakness, for proof that Cole made a mistake. And you want me to prove them wrong. I want you not to humiliate this family." Constance resumed walking. "Whether you prove them wrong or confirm their suspicions is entirely up to you." That night, Lena could barely climb the stairs. Her legs shook with every step. Her back felt like someone had beaten it with a fence post. She lowered herself onto her bed with a groan that would have been embarrassing if anyone had been around to hear it. Someone knocked softly. "Lena?" Cole's voice, careful and uncertain. "Come in." He opened the door but stayed in the hallway, like he wasn't sure he had permission to enter. "Martha said you rode out with the herd today." "I did." "How was it?" "Painful, terrifying. I think I nearly died twice." A smile flickered across his face. "But you didn't." "No, Dolly saved me." "Dolly's good like that." He shifted his weight. "Listen, I know Mother's pushing you hard. If it's too much, it's not." "Lena." "Cole." She met his eyes. "I know what she's doing. She wants to see if I'll quit. If I'll prove her right about me being useless." The bluntness of it seemed to surprise him. "But I won't. I can't afford to." He was quiet for a moment. "This isn't what you signed up for. The letters, the arrangement. I made it sound simpler than this. I should have been honest about Mother, about my father, about how hard things really are. Would it have changed anything? I don't know, maybe." "Well," Lena tried to shift position and winced. "I'm here now. We both are. Might as well make the best of it." Cole stepped into the room finally and sat in the chair by the window. In the lamplight, he looked older than his years, worn down by responsibility and grief and the weight of expectations he'd never asked for. "My father used to say that the land takes what it wants," he said quietly. "Takes your strength, your hope, sometimes your life. And you either fight it or you learn to give it what it needs and take what you can in return." He looked at her. "Mother learned to fight. I'm not sure she knows any other way." "And you?" "I'm still trying to figure out which one I am." Lena wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but she was too tired and too sore and too uncertain about everything to offer platitudes. "Your mother told me about the dinner party," she said instead. "The Hendersons and the others." Cole's expression darkened. "I'd forgotten about that. Or tried to." He ran a hand through his hair. "Robert Henderson's all right. A bit pompous, but decent enough. Adelaide, though, she and Mother have been competing for 20 years over who runs things around here. This dinner is going to be a performance. With me as the main attraction. Unfortunately." He stood. "Look, whatever happens, whatever they say, don't let them make you feel small. You're worth 10 of Adelaide Henderson." It was the kindest thing he'd said to her, and it caught her off guard. "You barely know me." I know you rode out with the cattle today even though you've never done it before. I know you sat with my father when you didn't have to. I know you haven't run away yet, even though Mother's given you plenty of reason." He moved toward the door.
This story was posted
That
on the
tells me
channel
enough.
The Rusty Saddle. Please do
After
not
he left,
repost it in
Lena
any
sat in
form.
the dark and tried not to think about the dinner party. Tried not to imagine 12 pairs of eyes judging her, finding her lacking, confirming every doubt Constance had planted. She failed spectacularly. The week that followed was a masterclass in controlled cruelty. Constance drilled her relentlessly on table settings, proper serving technique, the hierarchy of guests, and how to address each one. She corrected Lena's posture, her diction, the way she held a serving platter. Nothing was good enough. Every mistake was noted and catalogued. "The Sullivans are Irish Catholic," Constance said during one particularly brutal practice session. "Margaret Sullivan will be looking for any excuse to consider you vulgar. Don't give her one." "Yes, ma'am." "The Pratts lost their daughter last winter to scarlet fever. Don't mention children unless Helen brings it up first." "Understood." "And Marcus Henderson?" Constance's lips thinned. "He was supposed to marry the Langford girl, but she ran off with a cattle buyer 6 months ago. Adelaide's still bitter about it. She'll probably try to compare you to her son's lost opportunity. Ignore it." Lena's hands tightened on the platter she was holding. "Is there anyone coming to this dinner who won't be looking for ways to tear me apart?" "Robert Henderson's father, William. He's half-deaf and mostly senile. He probably won't notice you at all." Constance took the platter from her and set it down with precision. "This is what you agreed to when you married into this family. The Mercers have a reputation to maintain. I won't have you destroying in one evening what took me 40 years to build." "I'm not trying to destroy anything. Intentions don't matter, only results." Constance picked up the platter again and handed it back. "Again, and this time, don't let it tilt." By the night before the dinner, Lena was wound so tight she thought she might snap. She lay awake, running through every instruction Constance had given her, every potential disaster that could unfold. Her stomach churned. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and went downstairs for water. She found Cole in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a half-empty bottle of whiskey. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No." He pushed the bottle toward her. "Helps sometimes." She took a small sip and felt it burn all the way down. "Your mother thinks I'm going to ruin everything tomorrow." "Mother thinks everyone's going to ruin everything. It's her natural state." He took the bottle back. "You'll be fine." "You don't know that." "No," he admitted. "But I know Adelaide Henderson once got drunk at Christmas dinner and told Robert's mother she had the personality of a fence post. And Margaret Sullivan spent an entire evening lecturing us about the moral decay of ranch hands playing cards. And Marcus Henderson proposed to 3 different women in 6 months before the Langford girl finally said yes." He smiled without humor. "Everyone at that table tomorrow has embarrassed themselves at some point. They just don't remember it that way. That's not particularly comforting." "No, I suppose not." He was quiet for a moment. "You want to know the truth? Mother's not worried about you embarrassing the family. She's worried about liking you." Lena stared at him. "That makes no sense, doesn't it?" Cole leaned back in his chair. "She spent 3 years running this place alone while Father faded. 3 years of proving she didn't need help, didn't need anyone. And then I brought home a wife. Someone who might actually be useful, who might actually ease the burden. If she lets herself rely on you and you leave..." He shrugged. "It's easier to keep you at a distance. I'm not leaving. She doesn't know that yet. Hell, you don't know that yet." He caught her expression. "I'm not being cruel, just honest. We're all strangers here, Lena, trying to figure out if this thing we've built out of desperation and loneliness can turn into something real." She wanted to argue, but he was right. She'd been here a month and still felt like a visitor in someone else's life. "What do you want it to be?" she asked. "This marriage. What do you actually want?" Cole looked at her for a long time. "A partner," he said finally. "Someone who stays, someone who..." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Never mind, it's late. We should both try to sleep." He left the bottle on the table and disappeared upstairs. Lena sat alone in the kitchen, turning his words over in her mind. someone who stays. Such a simple thing. Such an impossible promise to make. The day of the dinner arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth. Martha worked like a woman possessed, producing dishes that smelled so good, Lena's mouth watered despite her nerves. Constance moved through the house like a general preparing for battle, adjusting flowers, repositioning chairs, finding fault with everything. "You'll change into your good dress at 4, mitotos," she told Lena. "The blue one with the lace collar. Hair up, no loose strands. Be downstairs by 5 to help Martha with the final preparations." "Yes, ma'am." "And Lena." Constance's voice stopped her at the door. "Don't try to impress them. Don't apologize for yourself. Stand up straight and remember you're a Mercer now, whether they like it or not." It was the closest thing to encouragement Constance had ever offered. At 5 o'clock sharp, Lena stood in the dining room wearing her best dress and her most neutral expression. The table was set with Constance's good china, delicate plates with gold rims that had probably cost more than Lena's entire trousseau. Crystal glasses caught the lamplight. Everything was perfect, polished, ready for inspection. The first carriage arrived at 5:30. Lena watched from the window as a large man with impressive sideburns helped an elegantly dressed woman down. Adelaide Henderson, almost certainly. She had that look of someone who expected the world to rearrange itself for her convenience. Constance met them at the door with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Adelaide, Robert, how wonderful to see you." "Constance." Adelaide's voice was honey over steel. "You look well, though I must say, all this talk of your new daughter-in-law has us simply dying of curiosity." "Then let me introduce you." Constance gestured Lena forward. "This is Lena. Lena, Adelaide, and Robert Henderson, our closest neighbors." Lena offered her hand. "Mrs. Henderson." "Mr. Henderson, I'm pleased to meet you." Adelaide's grip was limp, perfunctory. Her eyes made a quick, thorough inventory. Dress, posture, hands, face, and came away unimpressed. "From Philadelphia, I understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "How charming. You must find Wyoming terribly, rustic." The word hung in the air like a challenge. "I find it different," Lena said carefully, "but not unwelcoming." "Oh, we're all very welcoming here." Adelaide's smile sharpened. "Though I do hope you're settling in well. Ranch life can be quite demanding for those unaccustomed to it." Before Lena could respond, more carriages arrived. The next hour was a blur of introductions. William Henderson with his ear trumpet and vague smile, Margaret and Patrick Sullivan with their polite condescension, Helen and Charles Pratt with their careful sadness. And Marcus Henderson, a soft-faced young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Cole played host with stiff courtesy, pouring drinks and making small talk that sounded rehearsed. Constance orchestrated everything from her position near the fireplace, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Dinner was announced at 7. The seating arrangement placed Lena between Marcus Henderson and Patrick Sullivan, neither of whom seemed inclined to speak to her unless absolutely necessary. Across the table, Adelaide held court, her voice carrying over everyone else's. "I was just saying to Robert the other day," she announced, "how remarkable it is that Cole finally married. We'd quite given up hope, hadn't we, Margaret?" "Indeed." Margaret Sullivan's accent was thick, her tone disapproving. "Though one wonders at the haste. No engagement period, no proper introduction to the community. Quite irregular." "Modern times," Robert Henderson said with forced cheer. "Young people do things differently now." "Do they?" Adelaide turned her attention to Lena like a cat spotting a mouse. "Tell me, dear, how exactly did you and Cole meet? It's all been so mysterious." The table fell quiet. Everyone was watching. Lena set down her fork carefully. "We met through correspondence. Cole was looking for a wife. I was looking for a new beginning. Our goals aligned." "How?" "Practical." Adelaide's tone suggested it was anything but a compliment. "No romance, then? No courtship?" "Romance is a luxury not everyone can afford, Mrs. Henderson." "But surely you must have had suitors back in Philadelphia." A young woman of your background. The pause before background was deliberate, poisonous. Cole's jaw tightened. Adelaide, I'm simply curious, dear boy. After all, we know so little about your bride, where she comes from, who her people are, what qualifies her to. I come from nowhere important, Lena interrupted. Her voice was steady, but something hot and dangerous was building in her chest. My people are all dead, and I'm qualified for exactly nothing by your standards. Is that what you wanted to hear? The silence that followed was absolute. Adelaide recovered first, her smile frozen. My dear girl, I meant no offense. Yes, you did. Lena met her eyes. You've meant offense since I walked into this room. You want to know if I'm good enough for Cole, good enough for this family, good enough to sit at this table.
This story
The
was
answer is
posted on the
probably
channel
no,
The Rusty
but I'm
Saddle.
here anyway,
Please do
and I'm
not
staying,
repost it in
so
any
you'll all
form.
need to make your peace with that. Constance's fork clattered against her plate. Marcus Henderson coughed into his napkin. Margaret Sullivan looked scandalized. And Cole was staring at Lena with something that might have been horror or might have been awe. Well, Adelaide said, her voice icy, at least we know where we stand. The rest of the dinner passed in excruciating discomfort. Conversation limped along, stilted and false. Lena served dessert with hands that trembled slightly, very aware of every eye on her. When the guests finally left, their goodbyes were cold and brief. Adelaide didn't look at Lena at all. The door closed behind them. In the sudden silence, Lena waited for the storm to break. Constance turned to her slowly. That, she said, was the single most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. I'm sorry, Don't apologize. Constance's voice was sharp, but something flickered behind her eyes. Adelaide Henderson has needed someone to speak to her that way for 20 years. I'm only sorry it couldn't have been me. Then she walked upstairs without another word, leaving Lena standing in the hallway, shaking and confused and utterly exhausted. Cole found her there 10 minutes later. She expected anger, recrimination, maybe regret. Instead, he started laughing. Did you see Adelaide's face? He leaned against the wall, shoulders shaking. I thought she was going to spontaneously combust. I shouldn't have said that. I made everything worse. You made everything honest. He sobered slightly. They were going to tear you apart no matter what you did. At least this way, you got your hits in too. Your mother's furious. My mother, Cole said, just told you she wished she could have said it herself. Trust me, that's not fury. Lena wasn't sure she believed him, but she was too tired to argue. She started gathering dishes from the dining room, needing something to do with her hands. Cole helped her in silence. Together they cleared the table, carried everything to the kitchen, and started washing up. It was domestic, ordinary, and somehow more intimate than any conversation they'd had. Thank you, he said as they worked, for not backing down. I didn't do it for you. I know, that's why it matters. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled, the first hint of a storm rolling in from the mountains. Neither of them knew it yet, but that storm would change everything. The storm didn't come that night. Instead, it hung over the mountains like a threat, darkening the horizon but holding back its fury. Lena lay awake listening to distant thunder, replaying the dinner in her mind. Every word Adelaide Henderson had spoken, every loaded silence, the way Constance had looked at her afterward, not quite approval, but something close to recognition. She'd burned a bridge tonight. Maybe several. And the worst part was she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Morning brought no relief. If anything, the tension in the house felt thicker, more suffocating. Constance said nothing about the dinner during breakfast, but her silence was deliberate, heavy with unspoken judgment. Cole kept his eyes on his plate. Even Martha moved through the kitchen with unusual quiet, like she was afraid to break whatever fragile peace remained. Lena went about her work mechanically, fed the chickens, collected eggs, helped Martha with the laundry. The physical labor was almost comforting. It gave her something to focus on besides the growing certainty that she'd made everything worse. Around mid-morning, Tom Keegan found her in the barn. Mrs. Mercer, the younger one, Cole's asking for you. He's with his father. She set down the harness she'd been mending and followed Tom to the house. The walk felt longer than it should have. When she reached James Mercer's room, she found Cole sitting beside the bed, his father's thin hand clasped in both of his. "He's having a good day?" Cole said quietly. "Asked for you specifically." James turned his head at the sound of her voice. His eyes were clearer than she'd seen them in weeks, focused and present. "Lena, there you are." "I'm here, Mr. Mercer." She pulled a chair close. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dying, which I suppose is accurate." His laugh turned into a cough, but when it passed, he was smiling. "Cole tells me you caused quite a stir last night." She glanced at Cole, who shrugged. He asked. I wasn't going to lie to him. "Adelaide Henderson has it coming," James said. "Been insufferable since the day I met her. You tell her off proper?" "I may have been. Direct." "Good." He squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "This family needs someone who'll fight back. Constance has been carrying that burden alone too long." His gaze shifted to his son. "And you, boy. You've been letting her." Cole's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Fair's got nothing to do with it." James struggled to sit up, and Lena adjusted the pillows behind him. "Thank you, dear. Now listen, both of you. I don't have much time left, so I'm going to say this plain. This ranch will eat you alive if you let it. It'll take everything you have and still demand more. The only way to survive it is together." He looked at Cole. "Your mother and I built this place side by side. We fought, we bled, we nearly killed each other half a dozen times. But we did it together. You understand?" "Yes, sir." "I'm not sure you do." James's breathing was labored now, each word an effort. "You've been trying to please everyone. Your mother, the neighbors, the men. Trying to be what you think I was. But I wasn't perfect, son. I made mistakes. Plenty of them. The difference is I had Constance to catch me when I fell." He shifted his gaze to Lena. "He needs that. Someone who'll tell him when he's being a fool." "I can do that," Lena said. "I know you can. Saw it the first day you walked in here." James settled back against the pillows, exhausted. "Now get out of here, both of you. Let an old man rest." They left him sleeping and walked downstairs in silence. At the bottom of the steps, Cole stopped. "He's not wrong," he said finally. "About me trying to please everyone. About letting Mother run everything. She's good at it. That's not the point." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I've been hiding behind her strength instead of finding my own. And now you're here, and you're not hiding from anything. And I—" He trailed off, looking lost. "You don't know what to do with me." "No, I don't." The honesty in his voice was almost painful. "But I'd like to figure it out, if you're willing." Before Lena could answer, Constance's voice cut through the hallway. "Cole, we have a problem, Swoltitz." She stood in the doorway to the study, her face carved from stone. Behind her, Lena could see Dutch and two other men she didn't recognize. "What kind of problem?" Cole asked, already moving toward them. "The Henderson kind." Constance stepped aside to let him pass. "Apparently Adelaide has been busy spreading tales about last night's dinner. According to Dutch, half the territory thinks you married a madwoman who insults guests and has no respect for her betters." "That's not—" Lena started. "I know what it is," Constance interrupted. "But perception matters more than truth in these parts. Adelaide's version of events is the one people will remember." She looked at Cole. "The Cattlemen's Association meets next month. Robert Henderson is the treasurer. If he decides to make things difficult, he won't." But Cole didn't sound convinced. "Won't he?" Constance's voice was sharp. "His wife was publicly humiliated at our table. You think that won't influence his decisions? We need credit from the association to make it through winter. If Robert blocks it out of spite, then we'll find another way. There is no other way." The crack in Constance's composure was startling. "We're already stretched thin. Your father's medical expenses, the fence repairs, the drought last summer. We need that credit, Cole. Without it, we lose everything." The silence that followed was suffocating. Dutch and the other men looked uncomfortable, like they wished they could disappear. "There has to be something we can do," Cole said quietly. Constance's laugh was bitter. Short of Lena apologizing to Adelaide on her knees, nothing I can think of. I'll do it. Lena stepped forward. If it helps the ranch, I'll apologize. No. Cole's voice was firm. You were defending yourself. You shouldn't have to apologize for that. But if it means losing the ranch, then we lose it. He looked at his
This
mother.
story was posted on
I
the
won't
channel
ask
The
her to
Rusty
grovel to
Saddle.
Adelaide
Please do
Henderson.
not repost
There has
it in
to be
any
another
form.
option. Your pride will ruin us, Constance said flatly. Then let it. Cole turned and walked out, leaving them all standing in stunned silence. Constance stared after him, something complicated working across her face. Finally, she looked at Lena. This is what I was afraid of, that you'd make him soft. Make him forget what matters. He hasn't forgotten anything, Lena said. He's just choosing differently than you would. Choosing wrong. Maybe. Or maybe he's choosing the only way he knows how to live with himself. As Lena met the older woman's gaze steadily. You built this ranch by fighting, but fighting isn't the only way to survive. In my experience, it's the only way that works. Constance dismissed Dutch and the others with a sharp gesture. When they were alone, she continued, You think you understand this world because you've been here a few weeks. You don't. You have no idea what it takes to hold on to something when everyone around you wants to tear it apart. You're right, I don't. Lena's voice was calm, measured. But I know what it's like to lose everything. And I know that sometimes the things we hold on to tightest are the things that destroy us. Constance's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe the ranch isn't the only thing worth fighting for. Maybe your son's peace of mind matters too. His peace of mind won't keep him fed when winter comes. No, but it might keep him from becoming someone he hates. Lena turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I will apologize to Adelaide Henderson if that's what it takes. Not because I think I was wrong, but because I don't want to be the reason this family falls apart. She walked away before Constance could respond, her heart hammering. That conversation had been a gamble, pushing back against the woman who held all the power in this house. But Lena was done with silence, done with shrinking. If she was going to fail here, it would be on her own terms. She found Cole in the barn, mucking out stalls with violent efficiency. He didn't look up when she approached. I meant what I said, she told him. I'll apologize if you need me to. I don't need you to humiliate yourself for my mother's peace of mind. He threw another shovelful of soiled hay into the wheelbarrow. I'm tired of this, Lena. Tired of everyone else deciding what's acceptable, what's appropriate, what I should tolerate. Adelaide Henderson is a bitter woman who enjoys making others feel small. Why should you apologize for refusing to play along? Because your family needs the association's credit. My family needs a lot of things. He finally looked at her. Dignity should be one of them. The word hung between them. Dignity. Such a small thing, really, but also everything. Your mother thinks I'm making you soft, Lena said. My mother thinks anyone who doesn't approach life like it's war is making mistakes. Cole set down the shovel. She survived by being harder than the land, harder than the people who doubted her. I respect that, but I can't be her. I've tried, and it doesn't work. What do you want to be? He was quiet for a long moment. Something different. Something that doesn't require crushing everyone around me to prove I'm strong enough. He laughed, but it sounded defeated. Problem is, I'm not sure that's possible here. Before Lena could respond, Beth appeared in the barn doorway, her face pale. Mr. Cole, you need to come quick. It's your father. They ran, up to the house, through the hallway, up the stairs. Constance was already there, kneeling beside the bed where James lay gasping for air, his skin gray. I've sent for the doctor, she said without looking up, but I don't think... She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Cole dropped to his knees on the other side of the bed, taking his father's hand. I'm here, Pa. We're all here. James's eyes found his son's face. Good boy, he wheezed. Good. Boy. His gaze shifted to Constance. My beautiful. Connie. Something broke in Constance's expression. I'm here, James. Right here. Don't let them break it. what we built. Each word was a battle. Promise me. I promise, Constance whispered. James's breathing slowed, steadied, his eyes drifted closed, and then, with remarkable peace, he simply stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. Constance sat frozen, still holding her husband's hand. Cole's shoulders shook, but he made no sound. Lena stood in the doorway, an intruder in this moment of private grief, unsure whether to stay or leave. Finally, Constance spoke. Everyone out, please. Cole started to protest, but his mother's look stopped him cold. He rose slowly, still staring at his father's still form, then let Lena guide him from the room. In the hallway, he collapsed against the wall, his face in his hands. Lena stood beside him, not touching, not speaking, just present. I knew it was coming, he said eventually. I've known for months, but I kept thinking there'd be more time, one more good day, one more conversation. His voice cracked. I needed more time. I know. Do you? He looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. Do you know what it's like to watch someone disappear piece by piece and know you can't stop it? Yes, Lena said simply. I do. And because she did, she understood that there was nothing else to say. She slid down the wall and sat beside him, shoulder to shoulder, and waited while the grief worked through him in waves. The doctor arrived an hour later, confirmed what they already knew, and made arrangements for the undertaker. The house filled with quiet, efficient activity. Martha preparing the body for viewing, Beth draping mirrors in black cloth, Dutch riding out to notify the neighbors. The neighbors, including Adelaide Henderson. Lena found Constance in the study, sitting ramrod straight behind the desk, staring at nothing. Mrs. Mercer. Lena kept her voice gentle. Is there anything I can do? Yes. Constance's voice was hollow. There will be a wake tomorrow. Everyone will come. The Hendersons, the Sullivans, the Pratts, all the people who matter in this territory. They'll come to pay respects and judge how well we manage our grief. She finally looked at Lena. You will be gracious, you will be dignified, and you will not give Adelaide Henderson or anyone else ammunition to use against this family. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Constance returned to staring at the wall. That will be all. Lena left her there, alone with her grief and her iron will. The wake was held the following afternoon in the parlor, where James Mercer lay in a plain pine coffin built by his own hands years earlier. People came from miles around, ranchers and townspeople, men who'd worked for James and women who'd envied Constance. They filled the house with hushed voices and careful condolences. Adelaide Henderson arrived precisely on time, dressed in elaborate mourning clothes that probably cost more than everything Lena owned. She offered Constance her sympathies with practiced grace, then turned to Cole. Your father was a great man, she said. The territory has lost a pillar. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. Cole's voice was flat, exhausted. Adelaide's gaze slid to Lena, who stood slightly behind Cole. I hope this tragedy helps us all remember what truly matters. Family, community, the bonds that hold us together in difficult times. It was a masterclass in passive aggression, a reminder that Lena had violated those bonds, wrapped in the language of sympathy. Lena bit her tongue and said nothing. The afternoon dragged on. More people arrived, offering condolences that all sounded the same. Margaret Sullivan made pointed comments about the importance of tradition. Helen Pratt cried softly in the corner. Marcus Henderson looked uncomfortable in his formal suit, avoiding everyone's eyes. By evening, Lena's face hurt from maintaining a neutral expression. Her feet ached from standing, and her patience was worn down to nothing. That's when Robert Henderson cornered her in the hallway. Mrs. Mercer. He was slightly drunk, his face flushed. A word, if you don't mind. Of course. I wanted to say... He paused, choosing his words carefully. My wife can be difficult, I know that. And what happened at dinner, well, she does tend to push. I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Henderson. But... His tone sharpened. You embarrassed her, in front of everyone. And Adelaide doesn't forget things like that. Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. I didn't intend to embarrass anyone. Intentions don't matter much, do they? Robert leaned closer, whiskey on his breath. Here's how this works. The association votes on credit extensions next month. I have considerable influence over those votes. Now I like James, respected him, and I don't want to see his family suffer. But my wife is making my life hell over this dinner business, and she wants...
This story was posted on the
she
channel The
wants what
Rusty
she
Saddle.
wants.
Please do not
And what does
repost
she
it in
want?
any form.
An acknowledgement, a public one, that you overstepped, that you're sorry for causing offense. He straightened his collar. Do that, and I'll make sure the association looks favorably on the Mercers. Don't. And he shrugged. Well, business is business. Lena's hands curled into fists at her sides. You're asking me to apologize publicly to your wife for standing up for myself. I'm asking you to be practical. This isn't Philadelphia, Mrs. Mercer. Out here, reputation is currency. Right now, yours is worthless, and it's dragging your family down with you. He stepped back, satisfied. Think about it. You have until the association meeting to decide. He walked away, leaving Lena standing in the hallway, shaking with fury. She found Cole later that evening, sitting in the barn long after everyone had left. He looked up as she approached, but said nothing. Robert Henderson cornered me, she said without preamble. Made it clear that if I don't publicly apologize to Adelaide, the association will deny your credit. Cole's expression hardened. Of course he did. So what do I do? You do nothing. He stood, brushing hay from his trousers. This is exactly what Adelaide wants, to force you to your knees. I won't let that happen. Even if it costs you the ranch? Even then. He met her eyes. My father spent his whole life building this place. But you know what he told me before he died? Don't let them break what we built. Not the ranch, Lena. What he and my mother built together. The partnership, the respect, the refusal to bow to people like Adelaide Henderson. His voice was fierce now. I won't dishonor that by making you grovel. Then we need another plan. I know. He sank back down onto the hay bale, suddenly looking lost. I just don't know what it is. Lena sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Around them the barn settled into evening quiet, horses shifting in their stalls, mice scurrying in the walls, the soft creak of wood adjusting to the cooling air. Tell me about the association meeting, she said. How does it work? The members gather, review requests for credit extensions, vote. Robert presents our case since he's treasurer. If he speaks against us... Cole shook his head. The others will follow his lead. They always do. Who else votes? 10 other ranchers, some friendly to us, some neutral, a few who'd probably enjoy seeing us fail. And the meeting is public? Usually, members only, but observers are allowed. He looked at her. Why? An idea was forming in Lena's mind. Dangerous, possibly stupid, but it had a certain symmetry to it. What if I went to the meeting? That's not done. Women don't attend association meetings. Women don't do a lot of things until someone does them first. She turned to face him fully. Robert wants a public acknowledgement. Fine, I'll give him one. Just not the kind Adelaide's expecting. Lena, listen to me. Adelaide Henderson has been running her mouth all over the territory about how I'm unsuitable, disrespectful, a burden to your family. She's using me to undermine you, to hurt the ranch my husband works to keep running. The word husband felt strange on her tongue, but also right. If I hide away, if I apologize quietly, I confirm everything she's said. But if I face them, all of them, and speak the truth, they'll tear you apart. Maybe. Or maybe some of them are tired of Adelaide's games too. She stood, her decision made. I'm going to that meeting, Cole. The question is whether you'll support me or try to stop me. He was quiet for a long time, studying her face in the dim light. Finally, he stood as well. If you do this, there's no going back. You'll make enemies, powerful ones. I already have enemies. At least this way I get to choose how I fight them. Something shifted in Cole's expression, surprise maybe, or respect. You sound like my mother. Is that a compliment? I'm not sure yet. but he was almost smiling. All right, if you're doing this, we do it together. We present a united front. Let them see that you speak for both of us. Your mother won't like it. My mother doesn't have to like it. This is my decision. He held out his hand. Partners? Lena took it. His grip was warm, steady, sure. Partners. They stood like that for a moment, hands clasped in the half-dark of the barn, bound by a decision that would change everything. Above them, thunder rumbled. The storm that had been threatening for days was finally drawing close. Neither of them knew it yet, but by the time it broke, everything would be different. The morning of the association meeting dawned gray and heavy with the promise of rain. Lena dressed carefully, not in her finest clothes, which would look like she was trying too hard, but in her most practical dress, the brown one she wore for ranch work. She wanted them to see her as she was, not as Adelaide Henderson's idea of what she should be. Constance appeared in her doorway as she was finishing her hair. Cole told me what you're planning. The older woman's voice was carefully neutral. I think you're making a mistake. You've made that clear. Have I? Constance stepped into the room. Because I'm starting to think I've been making mistakes of my own. Pushing when I should have stepped back. Fighting when I should have listened. Lena turned to face her. I don't understand. James told you we built this place together, Constance said. What he didn't tell you is how many times I nearly destroyed it by being too stubborn to bend, too proud to admit when I was wrong. She paused. You remind me of myself at your age, too angry, too hurt, too ready to burn everything down rather than show weakness. Is that what you think I'm doing? No. I think you're trying to save something worth saving. I'm just not sure you know what that is yet. Constance moved to the window, looking out over the ranch. When James and I first came here, everyone said we'd fail, said the land was too harsh, the winters too brutal. They gave us 6 months. We lasted 40 years out of sheer spite. Her laugh was bitter. But spite only gets you so far. Eventually you have to decide what you're actually fighting for. And what did you decide? That I was fighting for him, for us, for the life we were building together. Constance's reflection in the window looked old, tired. When he got sick, I kept fighting, but I lost sight of what I was fighting for, started protecting the ranch instead of the family, the thing instead of the people. She turned back to Lena. Don't make that mistake. Whatever you say at that meeting today, make sure it's about what matters. Not pride, not revenge, just what matters. Before Lena could respond, Constance left, her footsteps echoing down the hall. The association met in a large building at the edge of town, half saloon, half meeting hall, smelling of tobacco and old wood. When Lena and Cole arrived, men were already gathering, talking in low voices that died when they spotted her. Robert Henderson stood near the front, his expression carefully blank. Beside him, Adelaide sat in one of the few chairs, looking like a queen holding court. The room fell silent as Cole led Lena to the front. Every eye was on her. Gentlemen, Cole said, his voice carrying, and Mrs. Henderson, thank you for allowing my wife to address the association. This is highly irregular, someone called from the back. Women don't speak at association meetings. Then perhaps it's time to change that, Cole said evenly, given that half the ranches in this territory are held together by women's work. A few murmurs of agreement, more of dissent. Robert Henderson stood. Cole, I don't think... Let her speak. The voice came from an older man near the window, William Henderson, Robert's father. I want to hear what she has to say. Robert looked like he wanted to argue, but he couldn't refuse his own father. He sat down with visible reluctance. Lena stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, so she clasped them in front of her. The room waited. I'm told, she began, her voice steadier than she felt, that I owe Mrs. Henderson an apology, that I embarrassed her at dinner, that I spoke out of turn and showed disrespect. She paused, letting the words settle. I'm told that if I don't apologize publicly, the Mercer Ranch will be denied the credit it needs to survive the winter. Adelaide's face was stone. Here's what I have to say about that. Lena met Adelaide's eyes directly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that speaking honestly about my own circumstances made you uncomfortable. I'm sorry that refusing to pretend I'm something I'm not violated your sense of propriety. I'm sorry that the truth is apparently more offensive than the lies you've been spreading about me all over this territory." The room erupted. Men shouting, Adelaide on her feet, Robert trying to restore order, but Lena raised her voice over the chaos. "I didn't come here to grovel. I came here to ask you a question." She turned to address the whole room. "What exactly do I bring to the table? That's what Mrs. Henderson asked me at dinner. What do I bring that makes me worthy of this family?
This story was
community,
posted on the
this
channel
life?"
The Rusty Saddle.
Her voice
Please do
was
not
strong
repost
now,
it in any
clear.
form.
"I'll tell you what I don't bring. I don't bring money or connections. I don't bring a respected name or powerful friends. I don't bring anything except my own two hands and the will to use them." She paused, letting the words land. "But maybe that's exactly what this place needs. Someone who knows what it means to start with nothing. Someone who understands that strength isn't about crushing others. It's about surviving when everything's against you. Someone who won't apologize for fighting back when cornered." Lena's eyes swept the room, meeting the gaze of every man there. "You can deny the Mercers credit. You can punish them for my words, for my refusal to play the games you all expect. But if you do, you'll prove everything I suspect about this community, that reputation matters more than truth, that pride matters more than survival, and that people like Adelaide Henderson can destroy families with nothing but gossip and wounded vanity." She turned back to Adelaide. "So here's my apology, Mrs. Henderson. I'm sorry you've wasted so much energy trying to break me. I'm sorry your son's broken engagement left you bitter enough to take it out on strangers. And I'm sorry that the only power you have comes from tearing others down, instead of building anything worth defending." The silence that followed was absolute. Then William Henderson started laughing. It was a dry, wheezing sound, but it was definitely laughter. The old man stood, leaning on his cane. "That," he said, "is the most honest thing I've heard in this room in 20 years. He turned to his son. "Robert, you're a damn fool if you let Adelaide's hurt feelings dictate association business. James Mercer built half this territory. His family deserves better than petty revenge." "Father," Robert started. "Don't father me. Vote on the credit extension. Do it fair." William Henderson's gaze swept the room. "Anyone here wants to vote against the Mercers out of spite. That's your right. But at least be honest about what you're doing." He sat down heavily, his piece said. Robert Henderson looked at his wife, who was trembling with fury. Then he looked at Lena, something unreadable in his expression. "All in favor of extending credit to Mercer Ranch," he said finally. "Say aye." The votes came in slowly, some enthusiastic, some reluctant, some clearly opposed. But when Robert counted them, the result was clear. Motion passes, credit extended. Lena's knees nearly gave out. Cole's hand found hers squeezing tight. Adelaide Henderson stood with rigid dignity and walked from the room without a word. The door slammed behind her. In the resulting chaos of conversation, some congratulatory, some clearly hostile, Cole guided Lena outside. The first drops of rain were beginning to fall, fat and cold. "That," he said, "was either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the most reckless. Probably both. Yeah." He was smiling now, really smiling. Definitely both. The rain began to fall harder, and above them, lightning split the sky. The storm had finally arrived. They made it halfway home before the rain turned vicious. What had started as heavy drops became sheets of water that turned the road to mud and reduced visibility to almost nothing. Cole urged the horses faster, but the wagon wheels kept catching in ruts, slowing them to a crawl. "There's an old line shack about a mile east," he shouted over the thunder. "We should wait it out." But Lena shook her head, water streaming down her face. "Your mother will be worried. We need to get back." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but another crack of lightning made the decision for him. The horses spooked, nearly pulling the wagon off the road. He fought them back under control, his knuckles white on the reins. By the time they reached the ranch, they were soaked through and shivering. The yard had turned to a lake, water pooling around the barn and outbuildings. Dutch and Tom were struggling to secure a section of fence that had come loose, shouting to each other over the wind. Constance appeared on the porch, a lamp in her hand. "Get inside, both of you. Martha's heating water for baths." They stumbled into the house, leaving puddles on the floor. Lena's teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. "What happened?" Constance demanded, wrapping a blanket around Lena's shoulders. "Did they vote?" "They voted yes." Cole was stripping off his soaked coat. "Credits approved." Constance went very still. "How?" "Lena happened." He glanced at his wife, something complicated in his expression. "She told them the truth, all of it." "What truth?" "That Adelaide Henderson is a bitter woman using gossip as a weapon. That this community values reputation over decency. That punishing us for my wife's honesty would prove they're all complicit in a game nobody should be playing." Cole's voice was flat, exhausted. "She burned every bridge we had left, and somehow it worked." Constance looked at Lena with an expression that might have been shock or might have been something else entirely. "You stood up in front of the entire association and said that?" "More or less." Lena's voice shook, whether from cold or nerves she couldn't tell. "And they voted in our favor anyway. William Henderson sided with us. The others followed." "William Henderson." Constance laughed, short and sharp. "That old fool. I should have known." She studied Lena for a long moment. "Go upstairs, get warm. We'll talk about this later." It wasn't approval, but it wasn't condemnation either. Lena took it and fled upstairs, her wet clothes leaving a trail of water behind her. In her room, she peeled off the soaked dress with shaking hands. The enormity of what she'd done was starting to settle over her like a weight. She'd publicly humiliated one of the most powerful women in the territory. She'd challenged the entire association. She'd gambled everything on a moment of defiance, and somehow, impossibly, it had worked. But what came next? A knock on her door interrupted the thought. "It's me," Cole called. "Can I come in?" Lena grabbed a robe and pulled it tight around herself. "Yes." He entered carrying 2 cups of something that steamed. "Martha made tea. Well, she called it tea. Pretty sure there's whiskey in it." "Good." Lena took a cup and sat on the edge of the bed. The first sip burned all the way down, warming her from the inside out. Cole remained standing, his own cup untouched in his hands. "I should have stopped you. Before you went into that meeting, I should have..." "Should have what? Kept me quiet? Safe?" Lena shook her head. "I made my choice, Cole. Own decision, own consequences." "But the consequences aren't just yours. You're part of this family now. What affects you affects all of us." "I know that." She looked up at him. "Why do you think I did it?" He seemed startled by the question. I assumed you were angry, defending yourself." "I was angry. But that's not why I spoke." Lena set down her cup. "I spoke because someone needed to say out loud what everyone was thinking. That Adelaide Henderson doesn't get to decide who's worthy and who isn't. That this community's obsession with appearances is choking the life out of everyone in it. That maybe, just maybe, there's another way to live." "And what way is that?" "Honest, hard, together." She met his eyes. "Your father told us to do this together, not you leading while I follow, not your mother controlling everything. Together as equals. That's the only way this works." Cole sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I don't know how to do that. My whole life I've been watching my mother run everything. My father let her because it was easier, and I did the same. I don't know how to be an equal partner. I don't even know what that looks like." "Neither do I." Lena's laugh was soft, tired. "But we can figure it out, if you want to." "I do." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I'm afraid I'll mess it up, that I'll fall back into old patterns and disappoint you." "Then I'll tell you, and you'll tell me when I'm being stubborn or reckless or too angry to see straight." She squeezed his hand. "That's what partners do, isn't it? They catch each other." Outside, thunder shook the house. The storm was directly overhead now, violent and relentless. Rain hammered the roof like fists. "I should check on the animals," Cole said, but he didn't move. "Dutch and Tom were struggling with the fence earlier. If it breaks, the cattle could scatter." "Then go. I'll help." "Lena, you just got warm. And you think you can handle it alone?" She stood, pulling him up with her. "Partners, remember? Come on." They changed quickly into work clothes and rain gear, then headed back out into the storm. The wind had picked up, turning the rain nearly horizontal. Lena could barely see 3 feet in front of her. Cole grabbed her hand, shouting to be heard over the wind, "Stay close! Don't let go!" They fought their way to the barn, where Dutch and several other hands were already working to calm spooked horses. Tom appeared from the shadows, rain streaming off his hat. "Fence is down on the north side, he yelled.
This story was
Cattle are
posted on the
already starting
channel
to
The
drift.
Rusty
We need to
Saddle.
get them
Please
back
do
before
not
they scatter
repost
too
it in
far.
any form.
"How many men do we have, Cody?" Cole asked. 5, counting you. Not enough. 6, Lena corrected. "I'm riding." Tom looked at Cole, who hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Get her a horse. Something steady." They saddled up quickly, working by instinct and lamplight. Lena mounted a solid bay gelding that Tom assured her wouldn't spook easy. The moment they rode out into the storm, she understood why he'd made that promise. The world had turned into chaos, wind and rain and darkness broken only by lightning that showed the landscape in brief, terrifying flashes. The cattle were scattered across the north pasture, confused and agitated. In the intermittent lightning, Lena could see them milling, starting to separate into smaller groups that would be impossible to gather once they bolted. "We push them back toward the barn," Cole shouted. "Form a line and drive them south. Don't let any break away." What followed was the most terrifying hour of Lena's life. Her horse plunged through mud and water, chasing cattle that were half wild with fear. Lightning cracked so close she could smell it. Thunder shook her bones. The rain was a living thing, trying to tear her from the saddle. But she held on, rode hard toward cattle that tried to break away, turned them back, drove them toward the others. Beside her, Cole worked with fierce concentration. Across the herd, she could see Dutch and Parker doing the same. A particularly bright flash of lightning showed her something wrong. One of the hands, thrown from his horse, struggling in the mud. Without thinking, Lena wheeled her horse around and rode hard toward him. It was Andy, the youngest of the crew. His horse had thrown him and bolted, and now he was on his hands and knees trying to stand on a leg that clearly wasn't working right. Lena dismounted, nearly losing her own footing in the mud. "Give me your hand!" "I can't. My leg." "Now, Andy!" She grabbed his arm and hauled him upright, ignoring his cry of pain. "Can you ride?" "I don't know." "You're about to find out." With strength she didn't know she had, Lena got him onto her horse, then mounted behind him. The gelding protested the double weight, but obeyed when she urged him forward. They made it back to the barn just as the others were driving the last of the cattle into the reinforced paddock. Cole saw them coming and rode to meet them, his face white even in the darkness. "What happened?" "Andy's hurt. His leg." Cole helped them both down, supporting Andy's weight. "Tom, get him inside. Send someone for the doctor if the roads are passable." Tom appeared and took Andy, leaving Lena and Cole standing in the rain, breathing hard. "You could have been killed," Cole said. "So could he." "That's not—" He stopped, shaking his head. "You're impossible. So are you." And then, inexplicably, he was laughing. Great gasping laughs that bent him double, his hands on his knees. "We're both going to die out here, aren't we? Doing something stupid and noble and completely unnecessary." "Probably." Lena started laughing too, the kind of laughter that comes after terror, when your body doesn't know what else to do with the adrenaline. "But at least we'll die together." "Partners," Cole said. "Partners." They stumbled back into the barn, soaked and exhausted and somehow lighter than they'd been before. The hands were settling the horses, checking for injuries, wringing out clothes. Andy sat on a hay bale, his leg propped up, looking embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. I shouldn't have—" "You did fine," Cole interrupted. "Could happen to anyone. Just stay off that leg until the doctor looks at it." Dutch approached, his weathered face serious. "We got them all back. Lost part of the fence, but we can rebuild tomorrow. No cattle missing, no serious injuries except Andy's leg." He glanced at Lena. "Quick thinking, ma'am. Kid would have been trampled if you hadn't grabbed him. Anyone would have done the same." "Maybe. But you're the one who did it." He nodded once, respect clear in the gesture, then moved off to help with the horses. Cole watched him go, something wondering in his expression. Dutch doesn't give praise lightly. You just earned more respect in one night than most people get in years. I wasn't looking for respect. I know. That's probably why you got it. They worked alongside the hands for another hour, making sure the animals were settled and the barn secure. By the time they finished, the storm was beginning to ease, the thunder growing distant, the rain slowing to a steady patter. Constance met them at the door to the main house, her face tight with worry that eased when she saw them. Everyone all right? Andy hurt his leg. Doctor's on his way. Otherwise, we're fine. Cole peeled off his soaked coat. Cattle are secure, barn's holding. Good. Constance's eyes moved to Lena, taking in her mud-covered clothes, her tangled hair, the exhaustion written across her face. Martha's got food waiting. Both of you eat, then get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day of repairs. It should have been a dismissal, but something in Constance's tone had shifted. A softness Lena hadn't heard before. They ate in the kitchen, beef stew that tasted like the best thing Lena had ever consumed, and bread still warm from the oven. Cole fell asleep sitting up, his spoon halfway to his mouth. Lena had to shake him awake. Come on, bed. Can't. Need to check on Father's. He stopped, the grief hitting him fresh. Right. He's gone. Yes. Lena took his hand. But we're still here. Come on. She walked him to his room, which she'd never actually entered before. It was sparse, functional, a bed, a dresser, a chair. Nothing personal, nothing that revealed who Cole actually was beneath the weight of expectations. Stay, he said as she turned to leave. Please. I don't want to be alone tonight. Lena hesitated. They were married, but it had been a marriage of convenience, of survival. They'd never discussed what it might become beyond that, but she was tired of being alone too. All right. She lay down beside him on top of the covers, both of them still in their work clothes, too exhausted to care. Cole's hand found hers in the darkness, holding tight. Thank you, he said quietly. For today. For the meeting, for the storm, for everything. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. He turned his head to look at her. You could have stayed quiet at that meeting, could have let me fight the battle alone, could have stayed safe in the barn during the storm, but you didn't. You showed up. That means something. To who? To me. His voice was rough with emotion. To this family. To yourself, maybe. Lena didn't know what to say to that, so she just squeezed his hand and let the silence settle between them. Outside, the rain continued its steady rhythm, washing the world clean. She must have dozed, because when she opened her eyes again, gray dawn light was filtering through the window. Cole was still asleep beside her, his face peaceful for once, the lines of worry smoothed away. Lena slipped out carefully and made her way to her own room. She changed into clean clothes and braided her wet hair, then headed downstairs to start the day's work. Constance was already in the kitchen, drinking coffee and staring out the window at the storm-damaged yard. Morning, Lena said quietly. Is it? Constance didn't turn around. Feels more like the aftermath of something. The storm's passed. I wasn't talking about the weather. Constance finally looked at her. Dutch told me what you did last night, riding out in that mess, pulling Andy to safety. Anyone would have... Stop saying that. Constance's voice was sharp. Stop diminishing what you did. It's exhausting. Lena blinked, caught off guard. You stood up to the association, Constance continued. You rode into a storm to save cattle. You pulled an injured man from danger. These aren't things anyone would do. They're things you did. Own them. I thought you disapproved of what I said at the meeting. I did. I do. Constance poured herself more coffee. You made powerful enemies yesterday. Adelaide Henderson won't forget what you said to her. Others will remember too. That speech is going to follow you for years. I know. Do you? Constance turned fully now, her expression intense. Because there's no taking it back, no apologizing your way out of it. You drew a line yesterday, and everyone in this territory knows which side of it you're on. And what side is that? The side that doesn't bow. Something almost like pride flickered in Constance's eyes. The side that fights back. You mean your side. I mean our side. Constance set down her cup. For 40 years, I've held this ranch together through sheer stubbornness and fear of failure. I thought that made me strong. Thought it was the only way to survive. But watching you yesterday, she paused, choosing her words carefully. You weren't fighting out of fear, you were fighting for something. For Cole, for this family, for a principle that mattered more than safety. That's different. That's better. Lena didn't know what to say. This was the longest conversation they'd ever had that didn't involve criticism or instruction. James tried to tell me, Constance continued, before he died. Tried to make me see that I'd been fighting alone for so long I'd forgotten what it was like to trust someone else, to let someone else carry part of the burden. Her voice roughened. I didn't listen, too proud, too scared. But last night, watching Cole work beside you in that storm, seeing the way the men followed your lead without question, I finally understood what he meant. Mrs. Mercer. Constance. The correction was firm. We're family now, not by choice, maybe, but by circumstance and stubbornness, and apparently a shared talent for making dramatic
This
speeches.
story was posted on the channel The Rusty
ghost of a
Saddle.
smile touched
Please
her
do not
lips.
repost
You
it
can
in
call
any
me
form.
Constance. Before Lena could respond, the kitchen door banged open. Cole stood there, his hair wild, his expression frantic. Lena, I woke up and you were gone. I thought... He stopped, seeing her safe in the kitchen with his mother. Oh. Good morning to you too, Constance said dryly. Cole had the grace to look embarrassed. Sorry, after last night, I wasn't sure. I'm fine. Lena moved toward him. Just came down to start breakfast. Right, of course. But he looked relieved, and something else, something tender that made Lena's chest tight. Constance watched them both with an unreadable expression. The hands will be gathering soon to assess the damage. Cole. I need you to ride the property line. Check for other breaks in the fence. Lena, you're with me. We're going to inventory what needs replacing and what we can salvage. It was a normal morning after a storm. Work to be done, damage to assess, repairs to plan. But something fundamental had shifted in the night. The way Constance spoke to her, the way Cole looked at her, even the way she felt about herself. It was all different. They'd been through the fire together and come out changed. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Constance's inventory was thorough and brutal. Every damaged post, every broken board, every tool that would need replacing. She cataloged it all in a leather-bound ledger, her handwriting precise despite the cold. We'll need to order lumber from towns, she said, squinting at her calculations, and hire extra hands for the rebuild. The credit from the association will cover most of it, but we'll need to be careful with expenditures through winter. How careful? Very. Constance closed the ledger. We're not destitute, but we're not comfortable either. James's medical expenses depleted our reserves more than I'd like to admit. One bad season, one major injury, one disaster we haven't planned for. She didn't finish the sentence. We'll make it work, Lena said. Will we? Constance looked at her. You say that with such certainty. Where does it come from? Necessity. I've been broke before. Being broke with a roof over my head and food in my stomach is still an improvement. You really did have nothing back in Philadelphia. Nothing that mattered. Lena met her eyes. Nothing worth going back for. Constance was quiet for a moment. I misjudged you. When you first arrived, I thought you were soft, fragile, someone who'd run at the first real hardship. And now I think you might be tougher than all of us. Constance turned back toward the house. Come on, we've got work to do. They spent the afternoon working alongside Martha, preserving what food they could salvage from the storm damage and planning meals that would stretch their stores further. It was mundane work, domestic and ordinary, but there was something soothing about the rhythm of it. Around midday, the doctor arrived to check on Andy. His leg wasn't broken, just badly sprained. The doctor wrapped it, gave instructions for care, and departed with a promise to return in a week. Cole came in for dinner looking exhausted but satisfied. North fence line is solid, lost about 30 feet on the east side, but it's repairable. Dutch and Tom are already drawing up plans for tomorrow. Good. Constance ladled out stew. We start rebuilding at first light. I want that fence secure before the next storm hits. There's another one coming? There's always another one coming. But she said it without bitterness, just weary acceptance. They ate in companionable silence, the three of them united by exhaustion and shared purpose. When the meal was finished, Constance stood. I'm going to bed. Tomorrow's going to be brutal. She paused at the door, looking back at them. You both did well today. James would be proud. It was the highest praise Constance had ever offered. She disappeared upstairs before either of them could respond. Cole and Lena sat at the table, too tired to move. Did that just happen? Cole asked. Did my mother just compliment us? I think so. Maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe I died in the storm, and this is heaven. Lena kicked him gently under the table. You're awake. Ow. Yes, apparently. He rubbed his shin, but he was smiling. You know what the strangest part of all this is? What? I'm happy. He said it like a confession. My father just died. We nearly lost the ranch. The entire community is probably talking about what a disaster my marriage is. And somehow, sitting here with you after the worst 24 hours of my life, I'm happy. Lena understood exactly what he meant. Me too. Why is that? Because for the first time since I got here, I don't feel like I'm pretending. Don't feel like I'm trying to be someone I'm not, or fit into a space that wasn't made for me. She looked at him. I feel like I'm just here, real, myself, and that's enough. Cole reached across the table and took her hand. It's more than enough. They sat like that as the lamplight flickered and the house settled around them. Outside, clouds were gathering again on the horizon. Another storm building its strength. But inside, something new was taking root, something that felt like home. The next morning came too soon and too cold. Lena woke in her own bed, disoriented for a moment before the memories of the previous day settled over her like a weight. The meeting, the storm, Andy's rescue, the strange, tentative peace she'd found with Constance and Cole in the aftermath. She dressed quickly and headed downstairs to find the kitchen already alive with activity. Martha was frying eggs and bacon in quantities that suggested she was feeding an army. Constance stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching the pre-dawn darkness. The hands are gathering early, she said without turning. Cole wants to start on the fence repairs before the day gets away from us. She glanced at Lena. You'll be working with the rebuild crew. Tom's in charge, but I want you there to learn how it's done properly. Yes, ma'am. Constance, the older woman corrected. I meant what I said yesterday. The kitchen door opened and Cole entered, looking more rested than he had any right to. He caught sight of Lena and something warm crossed his face. Morning. Morning. Sleep well? Well enough. She accepted the plate Martha handed her. You? Better than I have in months. He sat down beside her at the table, close enough that their shoulders touched. It was such a small thing, that casual proximity, but it felt monumental. Constance watched them with an expression Lena couldn't quite read. Then she set down her coffee cup with a decisive click. After breakfast, we need to discuss the household arrangement. Cole looked up sharply. What arrangement? The sleeping arrangement, to be specific. Constance's tone was matter-of-fact. You're married. It's ridiculous to maintain separate bedrooms like you're strangers under the same roof. We'll move Lena's things to the master bedroom today. The silence that followed was thick with surprise. Mother, Cole started. It's practical, Constance interrupted. The master bedroom is larger, warmer, and it's yours by right as head of this household. Stop sleeping in that cell you've been using since you were 12. She turned to Lena. Unless you object? Lena felt her face heat. No objection. Good. Then it's settled. Constance picked up her plate. Eat quickly, we have a long day ahead. She left them sitting at the table, both too stunned to speak. Well, Cole said finally, that was unexpected. Your mother is full of surprises lately. You're telling me. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, if you're not comfortable with this, we can tell her. I'm comfortable. Lena met his eyes. Are you? Yeah. His voice was quiet, certain. Yeah, I am. They finished breakfast in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before, charged with possibility, with the question of what they were becoming to each other. Outside, the rebuild crew was already assembled. Tom Keegan stood with Dutch, Parker, and 4 other men Lena didn't know well, hands hired on temporarily to help with the storm damage. They all looked up as she approached. Mrs. Mercer. Tom nodded respectfully. Glad to have you with us. We're starting on the east fence line, then working our way north. It's going to be hard labor, digging post holes, hauling lumber, stringing wire. You sure you're up for it? I'm sure. All right then. He handed her a pair of work gloves. Stay close and watch how it's done. Ask questions if you need to. No shame in learning. The work was brutal. The ground was still waterlogged from the storm, making every post hole a fight against mud and rocks. Lena's shoulders screamed within the first hour, her hands blistered despite the gloves. But she kept going, watching how the men worked together, learning the rhythm of it. Cole worked alongside them, stripped down to his shirt sleeves despite the cold, sweat soaking through the fabric. Lena found herself watching him when she should have been focusing on her own task. The way his muscles moved under the cloth, the fierce concentration on his face, the easy camaraderie he had with the hands. This was who he was when he wasn't trying to please his mother or live up to his father's memory. Just a man doing hard work with other men, comfortable in his own skin. You're staring, Dutch said quietly beside her. Lena jerked her attention back to the post she was supposed to be steadying. I was not. Sure you weren't. But there was amusement in his voice, not judgment. For what it's worth, he's been sneaking looks at you all morning too. Man's about to brain himself with that post driver. He's so distracted. We're not. Don't explain it to me. Dutch hammered the post one final time, testing its stability. Just saying, it's good to see. Both of you looking at each other like actual people instead of strangers stuck with a bad bargain. He moved on to the next section before Lena could formulate a response. They worked through the morning, stopping only briefly for water and a quick meal of bread and cheese that Martha had packed. By early afternoon, they'd replaced 30 feet of fence and were starting on the next section when a rider appeared on the horizon. Cole shaded his eyes against the sun. That's Marcus Henderson's horse. Tom spat into the dirt. Wonder what he wants. Marcus pulled up near the work crew, looking uncomfortable on his fancy saddle. Cole, Mrs. Mercer. He nodded to each of them. My father sent me with a message. What message? Cole's voice was carefully neutral. He wanted you to know that Adelaide left this morning, took the train back to her sister's place in Denver. Marcus shifted in his saddle, said she'd be gone indefinitely. Father thought you should know, given everything. I see. Cole's expression didn't change. Thank him for the information. There's more. Marcus looked directly at Lena now. Mother wanted me to tell you something. She said, and these are her words, not mine, tell that girl she has more spine than I gave her credit for. Adelaide needed taking down a peg. Maybe now she'll learn some humility. He smiled slightly. Mother doesn't give compliments often. Take it for what it's worth. Lena felt something unknot in her chest. Tell her thank you, and that I'm sorry for any distress I caused her son. Don't be. I'm relieved, honestly. The Langford girl was a nightmare. I only proposed because Mother pushed me into it. He gathered his reins. Anyway, thought you should know. Good luck with the repairs. He rode off, leaving them standing in the mud. Well, Tom said after a moment, that's something. Adelaide Henderson run out of town by her own shame, Dutch mused. Never thought I'd see the day. She'll be back, Cole said. Women like that always come back. Maybe. Lena picked up her shovel. But by the time she does, we'll be stronger, more established, harder to shake. Cole looked at her for a long moment, something fierce and proud in his eyes. Yeah, we will be. They worked until the sun began its descent toward the mountains, then packed up tools and headed back to the house. Lena's entire body ached in ways she hadn't known were possible. She could barely lift her arms. "Hot bath," Martha declared the moment they walked in. "Both of you, I've got water heating." Lena didn't argue. She soaked until the water went lukewarm, washing away mud and sweat and the bone-deep exhaustion of the day. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a robe, she found her belongings had already been moved to the master bedroom. It was larger than her old room, with windows facing west toward the mountains. The bed was bigger, the furniture more substantial. James Mercer's things had been cleared away, probably by Constance, leaving space for Lena's modest possessions to spread out without overwhelming the room. Cole appeared in the doorway, also fresh from a bath, his hair still damp. "Strange, isn't it, seeing your things in here? Good strange or bad strange?" "Good." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Definitely good." They stood facing each other in the lamplight, suddenly awkward. This was the moment, Lena realized. The moment where they decided what this marriage would actually become. "I don't have expectations," Cole said quietly. "About tonight, or any night. We can take this as slow as you need." "And what do you need?" "Honestly?" He moved closer. "I need to know this is real, that you're here because you choose to be, not because you have nowhere else to go." "I choose this." Lena reached for his hand. "I choose you, not because you're safe or convenient or the best option I have, but because when I look at you, I see someone worth building a life with, someone who fights for what matters, someone who—" She stopped, suddenly shy. "Someone who what?" "Someone who sees me, really sees me, not what I should be or could be, just who I am, and doesn't flinch from it." Cole pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her. "I see you," he said against her hair. "I see how strong you are, how brave, how you face down entire associations and ride into storms and pull injured men from danger without thinking twice. I see all of it, and I'm not flinching. I'm in awe." Lena tilted her head back to look at him. "I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn." "You're both." He smiled. "And I'm starting to think that's exactly what this place needs, what I need." When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, tentative. A question. She answered by pulling him closer, threading her fingers through his damp hair, kissing him back with all the pent-up longing and fear and hope she'd been carrying since the day she arrived. This was choosing. This was commitment. This was two people deciding that the life they could build together was worth more than the safety of staying alone. Later, wrapped in blankets with Cole's steady breathing beside her, Lena lay awake and listened to the house settle. Somewhere below, Constance moved through her evening routine. Outside, the wind picked up again, but the storm it carried was distant, not threatening. She'd found something here she hadn't been looking for. Not just a home or a husband, but a purpose. A place to stand and fight from. A partnership built on honesty instead of pretense. It wasn't perfect. Cole still deferred too much to his mother's judgment. Constance still wielded control like a weapon. The neighbors still gossiped, the ranch still demanded more than any of them could easily give, and the future remained uncertain. But it was real, solid, worth defending. In the darkness, Cole's hand found hers. "You awake?" "Yeah." "Can't sleep?" "Just thinking." "About what?" "About everything." She turned to face him. "About how strange it is that a month ago I didn't know you existed, and now I can't imagine my life without you in it." "Careful," he said softly. "I might start thinking you actually like me." "I more than like you." The words came easier than she expected. "I love you. It's probably too soon to say that, and maybe it's just exhaustion talking, but I do. I love you." Cole was quiet for so long she thought maybe she'd made a mistake. Then he pulled her close, his voice rough with emotion. "It's not too soon. And I love you too. Have been falling in love with you since the day you told Adelaide Henderson exactly what you thought of her." He laughed softly. "Maybe even before that. Maybe since you first walked into this house looking terrified but refusing to show it." "I was terrified." "I know. So was I." He kissed her forehead. "But we're less terrified now. That's something." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, building warmth against the night. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Lena worked alongside the men during the day, learning the ranch from the ground up. Constance taught her the business side, how to read account books, negotiate with suppliers, manage the household budget. In the evenings, she and Cole would sit together reviewing the day's work, planning for tomorrow, building the partnership his father had told them they needed. It wasn't always smooth. There were arguments about money, about priorities, about whose judgment to trust. Constance still pushed too hard sometimes, trying to control everything. Cole still retreated into passivity when confronted with difficult decisions. And Lena still had a tendency to fight first and think later. But they were learning. Learning to communicate, to compromise, to trust each other's strengths. One morning, about 6 weeks after the storm, Lena woke to find Cole already up and dressed. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." He led her out to the barn, where Tom and Dutch were already waiting. On the ground lay fresh-cut lumber, arranged in careful piles. "What's this?" Lena asked. "Remember what my father said about building something together?" Cole picked up a length of wood, testing its weight. "Well, I've been thinking, the dining table we have, it was my grandmother's. Beautiful piece, but it's always felt like a museum display, like we're eating off someone else's history instead of making our own." "So we're building a new table?" "We're building our table." He handed her the wood. "You, me, and whoever wants to help. Something made with our own hands, a place where we'll make our own memories, our own traditions. Something that belongs to us, not to the past." Tom stepped forward with a set of plans sketched on brown paper. "I drew these up based on what Cole described. Simple design, solid construction, should seat 10 comfortably, 12 if you squeeze." Lena studied the plans, emotion tightening her throat. "It's perfect." "Don't know about perfect," Tom said, "but it'll be ours. That counts for something." They spent the next 3 days working on the table between other chores. Cole and Tom handled the major construction, while Lena learned to sand and finish the wood. Dutch carved simple designs into the legs. Nothing fancy, just honest craftsmanship. Even Constance came out to watch, offering suggestions that were more helpful than critical. "Your father and I built our first table together," she said, running her hand over the smooth wood. "It was crooked and wobbled terribly, but we ate off it for 10 years before replacing it. Best table we ever owned." "Why'd you replace it?" Lena asked. "Because we got better at building things." Constance smiled, a real smile that softened her face. "That's what happens when you practice. You improve. But you never forget the first one, the one you built when you barely knew what you were doing but tried anyway." On the third evening, they carried the completed table into the dining room. It was heavier than Lena expected, solid and substantial. They positioned it carefully, then stepped back to admire their work. It wasn't perfect. The surface showed tool marks and the occasional uneven joint. One leg was slightly shorter than the others until Tom shimmed it. The finish was darker in some places than others. But it was beautiful. Beautiful because it was theirs, made by their hands, imperfect and honest and real. "First meal on the new table should be special," Martha declared. She'd been cooking all afternoon, filling the house with smells that made Lena's mouth water. That evening, they gathered around the table. Lena, Cole, Constance, and the key hands who'd helped with the build. Martha served roast beef and vegetables, fresh bread, apple pie. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and good-natured arguing. Constance sat at the head of the table, but she didn't dominate the conversation like she used to. She asked questions, listened to answers, let others lead. Something in her had softened since James's death, not weakened but made more flexible, more willing to share the burden. Halfway through the meal, she stood and raised her glass. "A toast," she said, "to new beginnings, to letting go of the past while honoring it, to building something worth defending." Her eyes found Lena's. "And to family, the one we're born into and the one we choose." They drank, the whiskey burning warm. "I have something to say," Cole added, standing as well. "When my father was dying, he told me not to let anyone break what he and my mother built. I thought he meant the ranch, the land, the cattle, the buildings. But I was wrong." He looked at Constance, then at Lena. "He meant the partnership, The way two people can face impossible odds and survive by holding each other up. That's what he built with Mother. That's what I want to build with Lena. His hand found Lena's shoulder. She came here with nothing but courage and stubbornness. She faced down this family, this community, this land, and she didn't break, didn't compromise who she was to fit some idea of who she should be. She just showed up, fully herself, and that changed everything. Cole, Lena whispered, embarrassed. Let me finish. He squeezed her shoulder. I was drifting before you came, following my mother's lead because it was easier than finding my own way, letting other people's expectations define who I was supposed to be. But you refused to do that, and it showed me I didn't have to either. You gave me permission to be myself, to make mistakes, to build something new instead of just maintaining what already existed. He raised his glass higher. So here's to my wife, who saved the ranch by refusing to apologize for being real, who taught this family that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites, who showed up when she could have run and chose us when she had every reason not to. The table erupted in agreement, glasses clinking, voices raised in support. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. She stood, her own glass trembling slightly in her hand. I don't have a fancy speech prepared. I'm not good with words the way Cole is, but I do have something to say. The room quieted. I came here looking for survival. A roof, food, safety, nothing more ambitious than getting through each day. I didn't expect kindness, didn't expect respect, definitely didn't expect love. She looked at Cole, at Constance, at the faces around the table. But I found all of it anyway. Not because this place is easy or gentle, it's neither of those things. But because the people here are real. They don't hide what they feel or pretend to be something they're not. They just are. She took a breath. Where I come from, people value appearances over truth. They'd rather maintain a comfortable lie than face an uncomfortable reality. But here, lies don't last. The land strips them away. The work exposes them. The hardship reveals who you really are underneath the performance. I was so afraid when I first arrived. Afraid you'd see through me, see how scared and lost and desperate I really was. But then I realized you already saw it. You all saw it, and you didn't turn away. Constance pushed me to be stronger. Cole gave me space to figure out who I wanted to be. The hands showed me I was capable of more than I thought possible. Her voice strengthened. This table represents something important. It's not fancy or refined. It's not trying to impress anyone. It's just solid and honest and built to last. That's what I want our life here to be. Not perfect. None of us are perfect. But real. Built on truth instead of pretense. On partnership instead of control. On choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. She raised her glass. To family, to home, to the life we're building together, one imperfect piece at a time. This time when they drank, Lena felt the truth of it settle into her bones. This was home. Not the place, but the people. Not the ranch, but the relationships. Not the land, but the life they were making on it together. After the meal, after the dishes were cleared and the guests had drifted away, Lena and Cole stood together on the porch, watching the stars emerge. The air was cold and clean, carrying the scent of snow from the distant mountains. You meant what you said, Cole said, about choosing us. Every word. Even knowing how hard it's going to be? The work never ends, Lena. There's always another fence to mend, another crisis to manage, another storm to weather. This life, it takes everything. I know. She leaned against him, drawing warmth from his solid presence. But it also gives everything. Purpose, connection, the chance to build something that matters. I'd rather have a hard life that's real than an easy one built on lies. Cole wrapped his arm around her. My father would have liked you, really liked you, not just approved of you. He would have recognized the fight in you. Your mother recognized it. Eventually, after you proved it about 100 times. He laughed softly. She's different now, softer, more willing to listen. I think losing my father forced her to realize she couldn't control everything, that sometimes you have to trust other people to carry part of the weight. That's hard for someone like her, someone who survived by being stronger than everyone else. It's hard for all of us. Cole turned her to face him. But we're learning. Together. That's what matters. Behind them, lamplight spilled from the kitchen where Constance and Martha were finishing the cleanup. Through the window, Lena could see Constance laughing at something Martha said, a real laugh, unguarded and genuine. 6 weeks ago, that would have been unimaginable. I think we're going to be all right, Lena said. Not perfect, not easy, but all right. Better than all right. Cole kissed her, slow and sweet. We're going to be remarkable. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other against the cold, watching the stars wheel overhead and the distant mountains fade into darkness. The land stretched out around them, endless and unforgiving and achingly beautiful. Their land now. Their home. Inside, the house settled into evening quiet. The new table stood solid in the dining room, ready for years of meals and conversations and the ordinary moments that build a life. Upstairs, their bedroom waited. The master bedroom, claimed and occupied, no longer a shrine to the past, but a space for their present and future. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The ranch would demand its due. The neighbors would gossip. The work would never end. Winter was coming, and with it all the hardships that season brought to the frontier. But tonight, Lena felt something she hadn't felt since before Mrs. Hartwell died. Something she'd almost forgotten was possible. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. Not comfort, but contentment. Not perfection, but enough. She'd come to Wyoming expecting nothing more than survival. Instead, she'd found a reason to live. Found people who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. Found work that mattered and a partnership built on truth. Found home in the last place she expected, not in walls and roof and land, but in the daily choice to show up, speak honestly, and build something real with people who did the same. The frontier was harsh. The life was brutal. The future remained uncertain. But standing there with Cole's arms around her and Constance's laughter drifting from the kitchen and their imperfect, honest table waiting inside, Lena knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she belonged, and that was more than enough. It was everything. The end.